Okay, so TNVR, when it's used on its own in isolation, can do a good job of stabilizing the population, reducing the transmission of zoonotic diseases like rabies. But if you combine it with other interventions that deal with the owned population, there's a potential for unwanted litters from their own population to be abandoned. And that can cause immigration of new free roaming dogs onto the street. So when you combine TNVR with those other aspects of humane and comprehensive dog population management, that's where you see things like the reduction in the total free roaming dog population, reduction in zoonotic disease transmission, reduction in dog bites, and a reduction in complaints. So really, it's that holistic dog population management that we would like to see. Okay. So at the conference this week, we have heard people talk about the interactions between dogs and wildlife and sharing some concerns about. Now, we want all nature to thrive, but predator-prey relationships are part of the natural ecosystem. Now, we share the same goal as those wildlife conservationists. We do want nature to thrive. We do want to see a reduction in the free-roaming dog population. But the way to do that, I think, is a point of controversy at the moment. So some people have maybe for a return to colour loving animals, and I don't think some of these people want that. And what we have seen is that when you combine TMVR with those interventions that address the immigration of new animals, which normally are from the owned population, combine those two and you actually see a reduction in the free roaming dog population, and then also a reduction of conflicts between dogs and wildlife. So we actually saw some quite good data this week on sterilisation programs that are being done in different environments. Taipei, for example, we've seen a reduction in free roaming animals, but also in some of those nature reserves as well, where we've seen consistent sterilisation lead to numbers decline. So we believe that those sterilisation projects should be increased, they should be consistently invested in, as I say, along with those other interventions to deal with immigration, and that really will help to solve any of these dog wildlife. I do also want to say that we need to look at dog wildlife conflicts in the round, look at the other threats to wildlife. There are many other threats, habitat destruction, hunting by people. And so when you think about dog predation on wildlife, any predation event is obviously a negative thing, and we don't want to see wildlife predated upon either. But actually, I think we should celebrate the fact that for many species of wildlife in Taiwan, they're coping quite well with those threats. So we've seen an increase in pangolins in this country, which is fabulous news. Now, as the increase in pangolin population happens, so there are more predation events between dogs and pangolins. But they're coping quite well as a population with those threats, and those numbers are increasing despite it, which really is something to celebrate. So I do think that although there is some controversy with some of the conservationists. I think we really share the same goal. We're aiming for the same thing. We do want to see fewer free roaming dogs on the streets and in nature areas. And I think if we work together using that TVR and those ways of addressing the owned population, including owned dog sterilisation, we will get to a time where we have far fewer free roaming dogs. In fact, we may even get to a time when we don't see them in those nature reserves at all. So the population management with dogs and cats is similar, although I would suggest that we need to consider their different sources separately. We need to spend time to understand each population as its whole. So I would like people who are interested in population management to engage in a bit of a thought experiment. So imagine that stray dogs and stray cats could speak. I would want to go out into the street and talk to the first 100 stray dogs that I meet and say, what's your story? Where did you come from? And some of them will be born on the street, but some of them would have been abandoned on the street. Maybe the mother of that dog was abandoned on the street. And that gives you an idea of where these animals are coming from. Once we understand the sources, then we can adapt our population management to address those, and then we can be really effective. Now, if we do that with dogs, we often find that actually they were abandoned, or at least their parents were abandoned. We do that with cats, and maybe you have a few more generations of that. Cats are really good at surviving in the environment without an owner. They're quite prolific breeders. Now that means that we still need to use TNVR in both populations, But maybe it's not higher the rates of sterilisation published, you really see those populations decline in a meaningful way. But it's the same questions as look at our free roaming dogs, look at our free roaming cats, where did you come from? And design our interventions to really target those sources, and that's a really effective, sustainable, long-term and humane population management. Okay, so I believe that population management here needs to be properly resourced and combined TMBR combined with other interventions to really have a good handle. So I think in order to do that, what Taiwan needs is really a national action plan that really combines all the stakeholders behind a common goal and creates coordinated action. So I travel to a lot of different countries and look at their population management interventions and help them to evaluate the impact of those. When I come here, I see a lot of potential. So I see a strong veterinary sector that can deliver high intensity sterilisation. I see some very successful projects. I've heard people talk about they've, coming to Taipei this time and not being here in 10 years, the difference that they see in the streets. There's been some very effective population management groups, and you've got these great projects that you've got. You've got a really compassionate public that really do care about animal welfare. And I think you're beginning to see a change in responsible ownership. So if you go out and canvass owners now, you find that owned animals are around sort of 50-60% already sterilised, sometimes even higher. So actually the job that needs to be done is not so difficult as some other countries that are doing. So I see great potential. I think the challenge that Taiwan has at the moment is that I see some fractions within the animal welfare group. I see some fractions in the and I think that's a shame because I think everybody shares the same goal. So I think what we need is some leadership and a plan, a long-term plan that can set Taiwan on a great path, because I think you've already seen quite a lot of success. So the no-kill policy that you have here in Taiwan, I think really reflects the compassion of people in Taiwan towards animals. And I think it's led to investment and focus in humane management that was not here previously. So I think we really must celebrate it. It was a great milestone for animal welfare. However, it does need to be accurately interpreted. So the no-kill legislation says that we should not kill healthy animals for reasons of numbers or to control their populations. What it doesn't do is prevent euthanasia. And euthanasia is to mainly kill an animal to avoid or to end its suffering because treatment or management is no longer possible. Now, as an animal welfarist, I very much care about the sentience of animals and their ability to suffer. And it's very important for humane population management that any organisation, whether that's government or NGO, has a euthanasia policy that has an animal welfare basis, and they implement that policy in a consistent manner. So we don't want to see animals suffering because of a misinterpretation of the law. Okay, very good. All right. So I think we should be, when it comes to the feeding of dogs and cats, I think we should be honest about the consequence if we actually manage to ban feeding, which is starvation of dogs and cats, which is not humane. And I also think it can be quite dangerous. So if a dog suddenly was removed its normal source of food, it would become very hungry and very desperate, as any of us would, searching for food. And I think that can be a real challenge in terms of predation of wildlife, or indeed maybe even aggression towards people as they become desperate for food. So I do support the feeding of dogs and cats. I also believe that that action comes from a place of real compassion for people. And where I've seen people try and ban feeding, it just simply doesn't work because people don't respond in the way that you expect. They just will continue to feed, but in an underground way. So I just think it would be a mistake to try and ban feeding. The other thing is I see great benefit in feeders, and I would, rather than call them feeders, I would like to call them community animal caregivers or guardians. These guys are actually a fantastic relationship with dogs and cats. And if you value them and engage them in your proactive TNVR activities, they can access dogs and cats far easier than any expert catcher can. So I would embrace them and involve them in proactive sterilization of those animals rather than trying to combat their feelings of compassion. We should respect them and we should utilize them and embrace them in our work. Now, I do believe there's more to caregiving than just feeding. And I think we can really work with those caregivers to help them to deliver that kind of the veterinary care, such as sterilisation, also ongoing vaccination. They can also monitor the population and see if there's any health problems with those animals, or indeed, if new animals appear in their area, then they can spot them and very quickly get them sterilised as well. So if you embrace those people and make them part of your team, they can be a very effective way of scaling sterilisation and making it much more affordable. Oh, I have one more thing on that. On Saturday, I go to Singapore. We've been invited by the national government there to go and see the work that they've been doing. And one thing that Singapore has really led on is developing this concept of responsible feeding or responsible caregiving. And so the animal and veterinary services worked with animal welfare groups to produce a responsible feeding guidelines. And that's what they deliver to their public. And they work very closely with the public on how to responsibly feed animals. And that means where you feed them, when you feed them, what food you give, and also clearing up the waste afterwards so you don't accidentally or unintendedly feed rats, mice, rodents, or even wildlife. So they do responsible feeding and caregiving in Singapore. It's been very effective. And as a result, they've had a really good both dog and cat population management program there that has reduced the free roaming dog and cat population. So I think that's a good example to follow. So your feeders or community caregivers can work very closely with the TMBR operators. They can help to identify where those animals are because sometimes they're quite difficult to see. Maybe they can feed them in appropriate places that makes catching more likely to happen. Some of them also can catch those animals themselves and bring them to veterinary clinics. And all those actions saves the TMVR operators money. But then the monitoring is really important as well. And I think if you can maintain those communications with the community caregivers, they can tell you when new animals come to the street so you can get them sterilised really quickly. Because every animal that is left unsterilised on the street has the potential to produce a litter that's unwanted and then will increase your free roaming animal population back up. So they are both action oriented, they can bring animals to you, they can help you catch them, but they're also your eyes and ears on the streets. And if you think about all the community caregivers across Taiwan, there'll be many hundreds, if not thousands, of people that can be part of your team if you embrace them and give them the respect they deserve and a role that they can really lean into and engage in as a compassionate person who cares about animals. Okay. So effective population management will deliver staying needs not just to the unowned dogs and cats, but also to the owned. And when we've been hearing about Faith for Animals work in Taiwan over this conference and hearing about how the actually majority of their sterilisation effort goes to sterilising owned animals. Those are owners who for whatever reason, haven't been able to access veterinary services. So we've got sterilisation of those different populations. But in addition to that, there are other things about responsible ownership that we really want to encourage. So it was wonderful to see the President open the conference on the first day and talk about the adoption of Bango. Now, isn't that great? So we want to encourage adoption. We want people to adopt, not shop, rather than buy an animal from a pet shop or from a breeder. Let's go and help those shelters who are really trying to rehome those animals that need a new home. Let's go and help them and adopt from there. The other thing is that we need consistent veterinary care for our owned animals for their own welfare needs, but also for zoonotic disease risk. So we do need to make sure that they are getting vaccinated every year, they are getting dewormed. So that's another important part of responsible ownership that will reduce abandonment. And I think we also need to deal with the breeders. So I hear that there are a lot of breeders in Taiwan. Some are doing a great job, some not so great. And breeding a dog or a cat as a pet is a profession and it can be done really well. but you need to know what you're doing. And so I think we need some control of breeders to make sure that the puppies and kittens that are going to pets are well socialized, they're healthy, and they're happy animals that are going to be kept alive and will not be at risk of being relinquished at the shelter. So those are some of the actions that I think, along with spay neuter, can really help to manage the population and get ourselves to a great position where we continue to see the reduction in free roaming dogs and cats on the Taiwanese streets. But they're doing that out of desperation, right? Because they're full and they don't know what else to do. So I think, I mean, the fact that the president promotes adoption is a fabulous start, but I think there are a lot of pet shops, a lot of breeders in Taiwan, and there could be a lot more adoption and a lot less shopping. So I think that there is a place for a strong PR campaign that builds on the sort of messaging that the president gave, that really increases adoption from those shelters. So they need some help. Now there is also something that the shelters themselves can do, and it takes some time, it takes some investment. But in the UK, at least, there was a sort of a revolution in our shelter industry. Um, a few decades ago, our shelters weren't nice places to go. They weren't much fun. They weren't enjoyable to go and adopt from. And the shelter community made a big change in how they presented themselves. And it was actually something that was led by marketers who said, what you have here, what you should do is value these animals, consider them a valuable commodity and sell, right? Make your adoption suites light, comfortable, airy, welcoming. Have a cafe. Get people to come in and see it as a nice social space. Don't make these sad places. Make them happy places to come where people want to come adopt. And I know you have some shelters here that are beginning to do that, making these really nice, welcoming spaces. So I think a bit of support to professionalize the rehoming centre, not just shelter, it's a rehoming centre. That's what they're there for. To really present themselves as a great place to come and adopt an animal from would really help, along with a PR campaign to get people to think very deeply about where they get their next animal from. It should be automatically, of course I would adopt. I'm going to go see what animals are out there. So yeah, I understand it's not easy when the shelters are full. The people that manage those shelters are in a difficult position. The return to field, the returning dogs and cats is one way around it. And I think they must have to try very carefully to identify the animals that can be returned, because not every animal is suitable for return. It's a recently adopted pet. They're not doing well on the street. They really do need to be rehomed. The other thing you can do, of course, is that rehoming doesn't just happen through bricks and mortar shelters. It happens through social media. It happens through fostering systems. And I think we embrace some of those alternative systems, especially fostering. It's so much nicer for the animal to spend some time in somebody's home whilst they wait for their new forever home to come along. So I think if you can, even if it's going to take some time to professionalize the actual bricks and mortar shelter system, in the meantime, let's try and increase fostering as a way of rehoming animals. And as I have felt very keenly this week, you do have a compassionate public here, and I think they would engage in that fostering system. I hope probably they already do. Maybe that's something that can be expanded if it already has started in Taiwan. I think maybe the other thing that I want to add is to try and understand to a much deeper level why animals are coming to the shelter in the first place. I think that I know the shelters are already busy, but there may be many things that they can do to prevent that relinquishment. I don't think people relinquish their animals lightly. They find themselves in a position where they can't keep their animal any longer. So let's try and understand that. Is it because rental agreements don't allow pets? Is it so they're not necessarily directly they're relinquished by owners. There's some of them in later things that can happen later. Gosh, it's difficult, isn't it? Because every example of human dog conflict is different, so it's very difficult to give a general answer to that. We have to deal with each one's face value. I think we have to also have some faith and hope in the fact that what we are not lose sight of the proactive population management that we're doing that reduces the free roaming dog population and reduces the complaints. So you have seen the reduction in complaints here. So each conflict does need to be dealt with in its own right, and understanding the causes and trying to come up with mitigating factors to stop that happening again. But don't lose sight of the fact that proactive work is going to bring the number of complaints down over time. It's a reality. Dogs and humans have conflict. People and people have conflict. It's just wildlife and people have conflicts. It's just one of those things that we have to learn to manage and come up with different mitigation measures. Not easy, but part of the day job of population management.
I think for me, the answer is I tend to just think about how to get the job done. Because I know our jobs is going to lead to a decreased population. So for me, if the complaints or these people doesn't interfere with our job, then we don't deal with them. But sometimes it's like the owner of the house standing there refusing you to release the dog back. Then you have to try something to work around it. Maybe we change the time to return the dog and we avoid any actual
face to face.
Yeah. So it depends on the level.
So to be totally honest, I don't work in the UK very much at all. I'm from the UK, I live there, but all of my work is done outside of the UK. I feel often quite ignorant of my own country. But there is an organisation here called Battersea. Have you seen them with the blue t-shirts? Battersea Dogs and Cats Home.
Oh, she didn't attend.
Okay, so Battersea is have more than one very large shelter in the UK, and they're known as real leaders in professional shelter management, and they run courses. So in-person courses, online courses, and they have like an international program under Battersea Academy to help improve shelter professions in different countries. So that's where I would go, because I'm not an expert in shelters, and I'm not even an expert in my own country, as I say. So I would go to experts like that. So Battersea is a great organisation. They really know their shelter management very well indeed. But I hear what you're saying, that left for the long periods of time and not good quality food, those are two significant issues. Yes, there is a possibility. But that's up to every country to decide. And some countries are happy with that, and others are not. So I work in Thailand quite a lot, and they are very relaxed about their dog population. People don't call for zero dogs. They want them to be healthy. They don't want them to carry rabies. They would rather not see litters of puppies dying on the street, but they don't mind having dogs around. Many communities in many countries in Africa where dogs have a purpose. They don't confine their own dogs, they let their dogs roam, and free roaming dog has a job. It's a great alarm system, it's great for keeping animals they don't want to have a big crops, it protects livestock. I mean, there's lots of roles, so some countries are very happy, and so others are not. But that's up to the population to decide.
I think she's like, this is not such a serious question. She's just interesting.
Yeah, like
what we think.
Yeah. And I'm again going to avoid giving my personal opinion on that, because it's not for me to decide. It's up for the people of Taiwan, of Taipei, of each community to decide. If they are happy with the dog population, then from my perspective, you give them healthcare, that's enough. If they're not happy, they find that there's conflict, then we work to try and reduce it. So I think if people can live in harmony, as they do in some countries, brilliant. Then we just give them sterilisation and vaccination and deworming, and we keep the population there. That's fine. But it's not me to decide that.
Yeah. I think for me, the answer is no. Because people are not so friendly to the animals here. So there's the reason that keeps me up at night until now. So I really hope one day there are zero strays on the streets. So and me and my lots of friends can sleep well.
Yeah, there you go. I would like you to sleep well as night. That's a good idea. And I think you can get there. So Yeah, I would like to do that too. And that's why I support both the TNVR approach that's happening on the streets, combined with the working with the owners to reduce the abandonment of dogs in the streets. And you put those two together and the population starts to go down. You keep pressing, it will go down and go down. So I share the same. I don't want leopard cats to be preyed upon. So we have the same goal. There are some that say they want to go back to times of killing healthy dogs. I don't think that's going to happen here. I don't think the Taiwanese people would accept that. I don't think they need to. I think we have examples. We have enough success happening in this country now that if you just persist and invest and keep going, you will get to a point where you have very few free roaming dogs on the street at all, and then we have less of this dog wildlife interaction. I don't want that to happen. So if that's I avoid different questions.